Welcome back from the break, Matrix. If you've just joined us, we are doing your exam guide to help you prep for the upcoming exams. If you're someone who's constantly running out of data, then this next competition is just for you. Waza Matrix is bringing you the hashtag WazoWinner competition, where 2 lucky matriculants stand a chance to win 2 gigs of data. All you need to do to enter is head on over to our Facebook page and all of the details will be there. Thank you so much, Tando. Over to you.
Thank you, Luni. Welcome back, boys and girls. We're still continuing with our exam guide to paper 2. Now we are going to move straight to section B, where we are going to look at the list or name type of questions, the what, the how, and the why type of questions. These are data response questions, and these questions should be answered in paragraphs. However, I need to allude to you, boys and girls, to say, even if it's a paragraph type of questions, you still need to write in point form, right? As it's difficult sometimes for markers to identify your solution or your answers if the paragraph is cluttered. So remember, always, always, always write in point form. Again, I need to also emphasize the point that abbreviations and acronyms are permitted in section B. It's only in section A where you cannot use paragraphs. Right? When your question 2.11 or your question 3.1, your question 4.1, these are the list or name type of questions. These are lower cognitive level and they normally carry a maximum of 2 marks. There is no explanation that is required there. So when you are asked in the exam to name a particular thing, you need to just name that particular thing. Do not go down and explain, as you earn no marks for explanation. For example, our 2.11 says, name any 2 causes of market failures. Name any 2 causes of market failures. Let's look at the solution. The solution says, number 1, you've got externalities. Number 2, you've got missing markets. You also have others like imperfect competition, lack of knowledge, immobility of factors of production, imperfect distribution of income. Like I said, you only need to name only 2 to get the 2 marks. Please do not write more than, as if you write more than the 2 that is required, the marker is only going to mark the first 2 and leave out the rest. So you name only 2. Again, I need to emphasize, guys, as you are writing this type of question, make sure your stronger answers are at the top, because normally we focus on the top answers and we leave out the rest. Right? And then we continue, we look at the mid-cognitive level questions. These are the type of questions that ask how, what, and why. Right? These you need to be guided by the mark allocation. Right? Normally, if it's a 2-mark question, you only required to give out 1 point. However, in giving out the 1 point, you need to show that you understand the question and there is a link between what you were asked and what you are answering. Answer these type of questions in full sentences. For example, it can be a 4.12 type of question. It says, why is it important for the South African Reserve Bank to monitor and to control the supply of money for 2 marks? Right? When it says 1 times 2, what it means is you need to give 1 point and that 1 point carries 2 marks. If you see a question written 2 times 1, what it means then is you need to give out 2 points and each point carries 1 mark in the exam. But if, for example, in this question, it says 1 times 2, so you need to give out 1 point times 2 marks, you earn your 2 points there. Why is it important for the South African Reserve Bank to monitor and to control the supply of money? Right? Let's look at the solution, boys and girls. Now, remember I said this should be answered in full sentences and you need to show the link to your solution. So here is the answer. The supply of money in circulation should be monitored to create a balance between money supply and the available goods and services in the economy. Otherwise, increased inflation would be as a result. Remember, boys and girls, when we've got too much money chasing too few goods, that results in inflation. So we need to ensure that the amount of money that is in circulation can match the available goods in the economy. Right. Let's look at the data response questions. These are your mid-cognitive level. We are looking at our question 2.2, our question 2.3. our question 3.2, 3.3, 4.2, and 4.3. These ones are given in the form of a paragraph, in the form of a cartoon, a table, an extract, real data, or a combination of an extract and a graph, or a combination of an extract and a cartoon and a table. Right? Normally, data response questions, they carry a maximum of 10 marks. So it's going to be your 2.21, 2.22, 2.23, right up until 2.25. Right. Examples of data response questions, ideally from a cartoon. You are given a cartoon, so they say study the cartoon below and answer the questions that follow. Let's look at the cartoon. There is our cartoon there. It says artificial versus a natural monopoly. Then we have got that guy there who is our monopoly, and they say, I don't have to worry, I've got a patent. I will always make an economic profit. And then there is another guy there next to him who says, I would love to form part of this market, but it seems impossible. Now, how do we tackle such questions? Let's look at the type of questions we can get from the cartoon. Right. Normally, when you get a data response question, right, the first two questions are usually easy. They are lower cognitive level question. And again, like I said, when we discussed our paper one, there is going to be scaffolding there. The level of difficulty is going to increase as the questions go down, right? And normally our first two questions, they get a mark allocation of 1 each. These are our list, name, identify type of questions, right? There is our cartoon again. Let's look for an example. This is an example of a question. It says identify the type of monopoly that is depicted in that cartoon there. Right, if we go back to the cartoon, what do we notice? The guy is saying, I don't have to worry, I've got a patent, I'll always make economic profit. Right, so what it means, boys and girls, is because the nature of the barrier to entry there, it is non-economic in nature, it's a patent, so it gives rise to an artificial monopoly. There is our solution there, it's our artificial monopoly there. That's your answer. Right? Then as we continue, now we look at the middle order cognitive questions. These are items in the data response questions. They range from easy to difficult. Again, there is scaffolding there. Right? The next two questions are moderate and each is allocated 2 marks. For example, you have to look at questions that ask you to briefly describe the term, what does this mean, what is, etc., etc. Let's look at the question again, or the cartoon again. Right, let's look at an example of a question. Describe the nature of a product produced by a monopoly. Right, when you are attempting this question, you are not necessarily going to get the answer from the extract or from the cartoon or from whatever data response or data form you are given. These are questions that require you as a learner to recall. So you might need to recall them. What type of product does a monopoly produce? Right, let's look at the answer. The product in a monopoly is unique as it does not have clause substitute. I'll repeat again, boys and girls, full sentence, and your answer should be a full sentence there. Don't just write unique, because it's a moderate type of question. Let's continue. Right, as we're continuing again with our data response, now we are looking at easy to difficult. The last question is a more difficult and is allocated 4 marks. These ones might require you to calculate. They might require you to evaluate. For example, you are asked how effective. You might be required to propose a solution. How is, etc., etc. Let me just speak to calculate kind of questions. These are questions that require you in the exam to calculate something. For example, you are asked to calculate the type of profit that a monopoly is making. Please, learners, always show working. It is important. Don't just punch the numbers in your calculator and then you just write the solution there. If a question carries 4 marks, the maximum you get for just writing the answer, you are just going to get 2. So you need to show your working clearly. Again, guys, why do you need to show the working? Just in case you punch something wrong and your answer comes out wrong. But if there is working there, the marker is able to follow through your solution and be able to pick. You might get 2 points there and lose out the 2 points for just getting the answer wrong, but your working is correct. So always show your working for calculate type of questions there. Right. For example, let's look at a question that carries 4 marks. It says, how can tourism alleviate poverty in rural areas? How can poverty alleviate poverty in rural areas? It's a how question. So what you are required to do as a learner there, you are required to show the link between tourism and alleviation of poverty in rural areas. 4 marks, 2 by 2, which carries 4 marks there. So a minimum of 2 points is required for that question. Let's look at the solution. Tourism can alleviate poverty by empowering poor people to exploit opportunities of on-the-job and other types of training there. So it's empowering poor people to exploit opportunities for on-the-job and other trainings there. Number 2, hiring rural people who work directly in the sector as tour operators, as travel agents, and also as flight attendants there. Again, you can also talk about providing income to rural people through spending by tourists on goods and services in the area there. Remember what I said, it's a 4-mark question, so you need to give a maximum of 2 points for that question. I will emphasize again, you get no marks for over answering or over attempting a question. Even if you know 10 points, you are not going to get 10 marks for stating 10 points. Stick to the 2 that are required in this particular question. Right. Again, you can talk about rural people can benefit from infrastructure built for tourists. Again, you can say acquiring skills needed in the tourism industry, for example, becoming tour guides, hotel staff, and other things. Also, tourism offers opportunities for the poor, allowing them a stake in to start and operate small-scale tourist-based businesses or tourism-based businesses there. Right. Now we are continuing. Remember I said our questions are scaffolding. Now we move on to the single questions, for example, that require you to explain, to discuss, to distinguish, to differentiate between, to explain with the aid of a graph or to tabulate them. Right, these are normally our 8-mark questions, and you find them in question 2.4, 3.4, and 4.4. These questions are important because if, as a candidate, you get these questions right, your chances of passing that particular exam are right. So make sure you attempt these questions no matter what. Leaving a blank space doesn't earn you any marks or it doesn't earn you any points. Attempt this question, right? Learners should explain or discuss in full sentences, right? If a question in 2.4 requires you to show differences, I would suggest that you guys draw a table and show the visible differences between the 2 items that you are required to show differences in. Right, if it's a diagram that is required, please draw a fully labeled diagram. Make sure all the X's are fully labeled appropriately. Listing or naming is not encouraged for this type of questions. The other type of questions you can expect here, it's your differentiate question. For example, differentiate between consumer price index and producer or production price index. Right, when you are asked to differentiate, you need to draw a table. It makes it easy for you to follow your thought process there. For example, consumer price index, this one pertains to the cost of living, and then producer price index pertains to the cost of production there. You earn marks, you earn 2 points there. And then the basket typically consists of consumer goods and services. And then this one, the basket consists of goods only. And then capital goods and intermediate goods are excluded from consumer price index, and producer price index includes capital and intermediate goods there. For consumer price index, prices include VAT, and then for producer price index, prices exclude VAT. Right? Interest rates are taken into account for this one, and then interest rates are excluded there. Then prices of imported goods are not shown explicitly there. Prices of imported goods are shown explicitly there. Again, because the mark allocation is 8 marks, you need to at least earn 4 marks per point there. So 4 marks for producer price index, and then 4 marks for consumer price index. At least 2 points, 2 points each. Remember, if you run out of points here, give examples. Those were our 8-mark question for question 4.4, 2.4, and 3.4. The last segment, these are single questions on how, why, etc., etc. These are higher order cognitive level questions. We are looking at our 2.5, 3.5, and 4.5. You need, as a responder or as a learner or a candidate, to give effect to the contextual demands of the question. So make sure you answer the question as it requires there. Right, examples of these are: how is X related to Y? What is the impact of B on C? What are the consequences of, etc., etc.? How effective are? Propose a solution to this particular problem. So, and also evaluate type of questions. When you get this type of questions, please, you need to show and you need to demonstrate to the marker or the examiner that you know the content and you are able to apply what is needed to be able to meet the demands of these particular questions. Right, boys and girls, let's switch over to Luni to take us to the ad break.
Thank you so much, Tando. Guys, we are going to take a quick break, but don't go anywhere. We'll see you straight after this.